welcome back to Smashing Nets Podcast. This is our recap for the Challenge Ride or Dies episode 7. My name is Zach, and I'm joined by Hannah.
Hey. Lucky number 7.
Well,
are we halfway through?
Oh, I don't know. Probably not. I would guess 1 or 2 more, and then maybe halfway through. They seem to be running closer to 20 episodes a season. I will say not lucky number 7 because you and I have both been sick in different ways this week.
Yeah, it's been... Yeah.
It's been, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where, we planned accordingly in other ways, and then, we
were off work.
You can't plan to be sick.
And, but the thing is, yeah, it sucks getting sick, but also it was a good time to be sick because it's not like we didn't go home for Thanksgiving. We weren't going to be able to.
Yeah. And
so we were going to be off work and home for several days in a row anyway. And so if we had to get sick, I'm glad it happened when it did.
Yeah. Now, apparently back in Tennessee, because we're not in Tennessee anymore, where we were, people were just having stomach flu or stomach virus like crazy.
Oh my
which
gosh!
is the worst.
So the flu is running rampant throughout the state, and now the people that had the flu a couple weeks ago now all have the stomach virus, where they're all vomiting for 2-3 days.
Yeah, I'm glad it didn't have that, but it's just it is what it is. We do what we can do, and we can do it. And
you got to do what you got to do.
So we not related to that.
What did we do?
We've started watching the Lord of the Rings extended editions in sequential order.
Yes. So you had not seen the movies, the original director's cut movies in how long?
Oh, I'd say at least 15 years.
Yeah. So the Fellowship of the Ring, which is the first installment.
I saw them on theaters.
Yeah. It came out in 2001. I always had them on all 3 on DVD. And so periodically I would lock myself in my room and I would watch all 3 movies literally back to back. And I would sit in my bedroom. Usually I'd sit in the floor and just watch. How many hours is that? Not the extended edition.
I mean, they're about 3 hours each.
Yeah, so roughly 9 hours of the movies, just straight 9 hours of movies. And so I've done that several times. I had not seen the movies in probably 10 years. And
I bought them for you on Blu-ray.
You did, but I don't have a Blu-ray player.
That's a lie. We have multiple Blu-ray players.
Okay, well, here's the thing. I couldn't tell you the last time I bought a movie. Anytime that we bought movies, at my parents' house, it was DVD, and then we had a DVD player that was hooked up to our TV.
Yeah.
And then Blu-ray started taking over, and our DVD player did not read Blu-ray discs, so we couldn't watch Blu-ray.
Yeah, but this is not that.
We don't have a Blu-ray player.
Yes, we do. We have 4 of them, at least. We have an Xbox One and an Xbox Series X and a PlayStation 4 and a PlayStation 5.
Okay, well, how am I supposed to know that
because I've told you multiple times.
No, this wasn't until recently when we had this discussion. I didn't know that those could read Blu-ray discs. Regardless, I digress. I had not seen these movies in about 10 years because the last time I did a full run through was maybe a year or 2 before you and I met. And so it had been a while. I had never seen the extended editions. So I've been begging you for weeks to watch Rings of Power. And you finally said the magic words, which were, we need to watch through the movies before we start that. And I thought you'd never say anything more romantic to me ever. So I was internally screaming. And so we finally are watching, and yes, extended edition because it's on HBO
I mean, if
Max.
we're gonna watch them,
we're gonna watch the whole shebang. And so I've been super pumped. So the last 2 nights, so last night we did Two Towers. The night before we did the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
And so the extended editions have 30 extra minutes.
The Two Towers
had 45
48 minutes.
All this extra movie, and
but I understand why it was cut.
It's just it's not anything that was required to get your point across for the movie.
In the Two Towers, there was a lot of flashbacks of Boromir and stuff that you didn't really need. It's kind of interesting, but you don't need it to make the story work.
You don't need it, but having it, especially for the Two Towers, having that extra footage did help elaborate on some things that helped me to understand how they got to this point. So I have been just having the time of my little life. And tonight is the 3rd installment, which is The Return of the King.
They're so long. And I remembered so much more about the Fellowship of the Rings than I did the Two Towers.
Because it's the first one.
I probably saw it multiple times in theaters, and I saw it obviously probably since then. But I mean, I probably haven't seen them since before 2005.
Wow.
Yeah. And
that was almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, and so it's not that I was against them or anything. It's just anytime it would come up, it's good God, it's 9 hours worth of stuff. And I'm not going to watch one and not the others. And
that's right. You have to watch all of them.
I'd rather watch something else that I'm not going to have to commit 9 hours to. And so, I just haven't seen him in a long time. And, I mean, there's some things that are not as good as I remembered. And then there's some things that are, fine, better than I remembered. But it's, they are just long, especially the extended editions. They are...
I am eating
it's basically
it
4 hours each movie.
I can't get enough.
It's so much.
I wish there was more.
There's a whole Hobbit series.
I know, and you won't commit to watching that with me.
I'm on the fence about that one just because we'll get to the challenge in a minute. The Lord of the Rings.
Right now, this is a podcast about Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings.
The Lord of the Rings is I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's 900 pages total. And then it turned it into 3 3-hour movies. The Hobbit is 187 pages because I read it in middle school. And they turned that into 3 3-hour movies. Well, the source material's just not there for The Hobbit to be 9 hours long. If The Hobbit was 1 3-hour movie,
it'd be great. It would have been perfect.
Or
it had been
2 2-hour movies.
Yeah, it would have been perfect at between 3 to 4 hours total.
It's just
for the entire story.
There's not enough source material, so they're having a 20-30 minute dinner in real time in one of the movies. And
I remember sitting in theaters through that, and I thought, man, this is kind of dragging.
Yeah, I haven't watched them out of principle because I was just I've read the book and I've seen all the other movies. Mm-hmm. There's no way you can take every single thing that happens in The Hobbit in the book and make it into a cohesive 9-hour experience. And so I just haven't watched it.
Correction on the pages.
What also depends? It depends on what.
The 50th anniversary 1-volume edition of The Lord of the Rings has 1,178 pages.
Yeah, but it also depends on how many words per page they do. They do different versions of it. I was just giving a brief one. My point is, it's literally almost 10 times the amount of material.
Yeah.
And they made 3 3-hour movies, and then you take The Hobbit, and it's a tenth of that.
I think the Hobbit, had it been 2 hours max in a 2-part series, would have been perfect. Yeah.
So anyway, I haven't watched them just out of principle, and I was I'm not gonna watch this crap because it's 9 hours again. Because from the beginning, they said it was going to be a trilogy.
They did.
And I was
because The Lord of the Rings was a trilogy.
And I was well, there's nothing there. So anyway, I don't dislike The Hobbit. It's just I've
not seen them since they came out in theaters. So I do kind of want to watch through them just for
I'm
principle.
sure we will, but good God.
Yes.
So
we're working our way back in time. We're doing Lord of the Rings, then The Hobbit, then we're finally getting the Rings of Power.
Release order though, like
it is.
Yeah. And we're still trying to work through the MCU in chronological order.
But
not
this
release
comes
order.
first right now.
Yeah. Good Lord.
Here we go. Are we talking about the challenge now?
Yes. Episode 7 starts with Skincare Saturday / Super Secret Tori and Devin meeting, and very Devin themed episode.
Yes.
I've seen most of the takes that I've seen are Devin is not Wes, and this is going to come back to bite him because as much as like of a reputation of having, you know, multiple dealings or being shady or whatever, like statistically, Wes really wasn't. In this case, Devin legitimately has had deals with every single person in the house, it seems.
Yeah.
And that will come back to bite you one way or the other. Or it won't. We'll see. I don't know what happens this season.
All it takes is the next episode for someone else to make a big ruckus or get in a fight and just divert the attention.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, I don't know. We'll see. This has been a pretty low drama season other than like Raven getting mad at Nerys and Johnny, but that was so long ago. I will say, I'll go through our Instagram and, you know, just, you know, like things from challengers just to kind of keep our Instagram going. And sometimes people come up and I'll just be like, I don't even know who this is. And then it's like someone who was like was on like 1 or 2 episodes and then never did another season, and like were from like spin-off shows that I didn't know who they were. And it's just like, oh yeah, I completely forget. And I'm sure we're gonna have a lot of those from this season that we won't ever see again. Like it won't surprise me if we don't see Kim and Colleen again. It won't surprise me if we don't see Tommy and Annalise again. It won't surprise me if we don't see who else? Oh, I forgot. Oh, like Raven and Johnny again. Although Johnny was a good competitor. Raven just couldn't tie her shoes.
You know who I was thinking about earlier today? Or maybe it was yesterday.
No.
Emmanuel.
Yeah, that's another one. And he was fun.
He was really fun.
Yeah. I mean, he just kind of stopped. He just didn't go into elimination for a long time. But yeah, like him, Amy, who was like, they may come back later on, but who knows? So Devin tells Tori basically that he wants to make a deal. My notes say wants to make the deal woman and Michelle, but I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be with Jeyyy and Michelle.
Yeah, so everybody, you know, is starting to think about like, oh, Devin's kind of hanging around Jeyyy and Michelle, and Tori wants to make it clear to the house that they are not with Jeyyy and Michelle, which Devin disagrees with. He's like, I really want to renew our contract, which is we save each other if we win.
Well, Devin's whole thing is new champs. He wants, even though he's been around for 7 seasons at this point, he wants someone new to win, so he's going to align with anyone that's going to help do that. He would rather someone new win that he's not necessarily close with than for the same people to win again. Then we have like Amber B and Nelson talk, and they're basically like, oh, I got your back, whatever, hug. He made a joke about how lucky Chauncey was to be like dating her or something.
Yeah, and then he also says that he feels like he's making all the right moves in the house, which should have been our foreshadowing.
Yeah, I mean, when they because that kind of came out of nowhere, and I was like, well, that's either gonna be good for Amber or bad for her going forward. Then we have Chauncey and Jordyn talking, and I was like, oh, so Amber and Chauncey are going to be kind of central to this episode, it seems.
Yeah. And Chauncey, it seemed like he sought out Jordyn. To try and become friendly with Jordyn.
Yeah, I mean, great plan, because Jordyn's real good.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Jordyn didn't necessarily say, like, yeah, we're an alliance, but he's like, you know, I'm not coming for you, but I'm coming for your friends.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, we're cool otherwise. And so they kind of have a deal, which later in the episode, Chauncey is like, no, we don't. But they definitely came to some sort of terms. And so then we get a day out. We had a day out and a night out in this day.
Before we go out.
Episode.
In case no one else caught it, Devin quoted Nelson.
Yeah, I didn't write that, but yeah.
And says, as Nelson would say, we're coming down to the nitty-gritty here.
We haven't had any big like Nelson
isms.
Yeah, slip ups.
And I've been hungry for that. I guess you could say.
I think he's predetermined a lot of the things he's going to say, and that's kind of a disservice to the people who watch the show.
Yeah. The people who want philosophical Nelson.
You need Nelson loose. Not
loose as a goose.
Not like, oh, what should I say that would be funny or cool? No, you just like, you need him to be real.
Just get in there and start saying stuff.
Maybe get him a little drunk beforehand and just see what happens and just go from there. And so we get a day out to a bar. I'm not really sure why, because we get a night. I was like, oh, they did a day out this episode.
So they won't do a night out.
But they did both.
Yeah.
And the only real stuff that happened from what I remember is Bananas goes to Darrell and it was like, man, Jay and Michelle are trying to win you guys over, and hey, I don't trust them, and basically kind of like, oh, we're both vets, we should try to stick together and be on the same page. Mm-hmm. And then Darrell goes over to Veronica, and he's like, hey, Bananas saying this, and she was just like, why didn't he not say that from day one? Like, why is he waiting until right now?
Yeah.
And Darrell's like, yeah, I don't trust him at all.
I get it. But Bananas, I think, sees through it because he, in a confessional talking about Darrell, says he doesn't talk game, but he's still playing the game.
Yeah. Darrell's, so from what I remember, ever since Darrell has come back, and it may have been this way in the earlier seasons as well, his whole thing is just like, you know what? I'm just kind of here. I'm going to lay low and be good enough to not go home and then hope that I can make a final and then perform. And he doesn't like to get involved in things. He doesn't even really show out in like the dailies and stuff most time in the like most recent versions we've seen. But again, if he's in a final, like you don't want to see him in a final because he's gonna compete. Like
the chances of him winning a final are pretty high.
Still, yeah, even if he's not been great all season, like if especially if it's something that he can do kind of on his own. Mm-hmm. Like if he doesn't have a partner to like worry about like being a downfall of him, like I mean that final in All Stars, like yes, beat him, but it wasn't by much.
No, and it's almost like throughout the season he's on battery reserve until he gets to a final, and then he's like, "Hey, I'm fully charged. Let's go."
Yeah, I mean, I think that may be what it is. He's just kind of like, you know what, just got to get to the final. Who cares how it happens?
We also get Veronica here saying a quote that really comes back to bite her in the butt later in this episode.
Okay. I don't have that.
Darrell came to tell her kind of about his conversation with Bananas, and she says, you know, she's like, we don't have to pick a side until we actually have to pick a side.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And in doing so and having that mindset, it comes back and really
they weren't going to side with Bananas anyway because they don't trust him. The only thing that they have in common together is like that they're just vets. Like they're not a group that's like long-term work together over the years or anything like that. So Anissa and Jeyyy talk at the bar too.
And she tells him that she knows that it's a game, but she's still mad.
And he gets upset again, and she's like, "You're mad at us because Jordyn yelled at you." And then they show the clip, and he did
not yell. He disrespected so calm.
Him.
Jordan was so calm and called him out very straight face.
If anything, Jeyyy was the one who raised the level.
Yes. And then Jeyyy just kind of retorts. He's like, "You're only as strong as your partner." And Anissa had the best burn comeback ever. And she said, "Well, we're pretty freaking strong."
Yeah.
And it's true. They are.
Yeah. Jeyyy I'm interested to see how this season works out for Jeyyy, because there's a possibility that you can make all the dumb moves and still make a final. Like,
Yeah.
you never know. It's just the way things can go. So we get the daily called Peaking Blinders.
Peaky Blinders.
Yeah.
I've never watched that.
I haven't either. Someone that we both know, Brandon. It's his like favorite show.
Oh, yeah, that's on par for him.
Yeah, I haven't watched it. Like, not because I dislike any of the people in it. It's just I don't know.
I've heard
There's too much TV.
Yeah, there is. There's too much good TV to get out there and
honestly,
watch.
like that is such a thing. Like it's a blessing and a curse. Like we're living in like the golden age of television, as far as like you can do things now that were never possible before because it wouldn't have gotten greenlit in the past. And you can make these like really crazy epic things that people love, but then every single company is trying to make that next big thing like that, that they're all competing for your attention, and a lot of them you miss out on.
Yeah.
And
For me, Peaky Blinders is one of those. I keep hearing people talk about it and say how good it is, but I haven't gotten to it because there's so much other TV to watch.
and you don't like the British either. That's why.
You're right. That's it.
Yeah, you hate beans.
Mr. Bean.
You-
Because James Acaster's girlfriend cheated on him with Mr. Bean and left him for Mr. Bean.
Which is a true story.
It is a true story.
Because James Acaster, it was like 27 at the time.
And he's not ugly, and he's hilarious. He is one of the funniest people on the planet.
Yeah.
I love James
And Mr.
Acaster.
Bean is at least 30 years older than him, if not more.
Yeah.
So Peaking Blinders, basically, after they explain the rules, Casey just says, "Don't be a loser," and TJ's like, "That's right, don't be a loser." And it's just there's a puzzle, and it's like different shapes and colors, and you have to run, I don't know, half mile, quarter mile down away, and one of you stands on this little pole that reveals the blinders, and then your teammate is climbed up on like a ladder, and they have to memorize what they see. So it's a similar take on some things that we've seen in the past, but kind of a new way to do it.
A lot of endurance and a lot of memorization.
Well, and this one was tough just because, like it wasn't just like uniform pieces, or it was like, oh, well, this one is like an 8-inch long rhombus and that's blue, and then this is a square that's green, and it's
and the triangle that's pink.
Yeah, and it's just like you got to figure all that out as well, and so. That threw your whole thing in. I don't really have a lot from the daily other than before it starts, Nany says she's suspicious of Devin and Tori, to Bananas and to the little confessional camera thing.
Yes.
And then once it starts, Veronica is barely walking.
My first note, Nelsonism.
Oh, we got one?
In the confessional, or like the pre-daily interview with him and Nerys, he says, "I've taken a lot of yoga classes."
That's true. I think that's just grammar, though. It's not like.
But he was not trying to do that.
No.
It just
that's
came
what
out.
You need.
And this is the Nelson that I wanted.
Well, and someone in our psych group pointed out it didn't help because he wasn't very good at balancing on that little thing.
No, he might need to took some more. Bananas did say something about Veronica.
It sounded like he said "bananas." Bananas.
But Bananas, talking about Veronica walking, he said if she walked any slower, she'd be asleep.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, she was taking her sweet, precious time.
I mean,
she was not in any kind of competition mode. She was like, hey, I'm just going to
Darrell said
go when I go.
She was, or they were going to waddle along. And they also were the only team that we saw that started memorizing from the top, because Veronica started at the top. And this is definitely a puzzle. You have to start from the bottom and build up.
Because of gravity.
And so their whole first run was useless. Mm-hmm. And also, like...
And TJ was like, what are you doing?
Yeah, he's like, it's been 20 minutes and you guys just got here. And
still have nothing.
Yeah, so... Jordyn is upset that Anissa's just walking. Similar situation. Anissa's got the edge on Veronica, though. like just in an overall competitive perspective, I'd take Aneesa all day long over Veronica if you had to pick between the two.
I wish that Jake would listen to you say
I mean, I don't think that's debatable. Like so like 2 weeks ago or whatever it was, Aneesa in that elimination, like she definitely did her part to help them win that 100%, and like was making it to where she was a good goalie and she carried like a crazy amount of blocks.
I think that was last week.
It may have been last week. But Veronica is not going to do that. Like Veronica persevered through what happened this elimination we'll get to. But that's just more because everyone sucked at a puzzle.
Yeah.
And so anyway, Jordyn is upset that they're walking. And I don't really have anything else other than Devin and Tori were close, but Nelson and Nurys win again.
Yeah. Nelson and Nurys were way ahead of everybody in terms of the running.
Yeah.
But he didn't want her to start slacking off because of that. And he's like, I need to keep pushing her to her limits, even though we're ahead, because he wanted to make sure that she can handle doing even more when they get to a final, which is smart.
Which is not something you say with Nelson a lot of times.
But it was smart.
Yeah, I mean,
it was a smart idea for Nelson.
It's crazy that he like legitimately lost like 51 dailies in a row or something. He's won 2
this
with
season.
Nurys this season. Yeah.
Is it the season? Is it Nelson, or is it having Nurys as a partner?
Probably a little bit of all of it. Yeah, and also there's no The thing is, there's no pressure if you lose. If you come in last place in any of these dailies, who cares? When that becomes a thing where it's the people who are in last place go into elimination immediately, that bumps up everyone's level of competition in the dailies. Because like Bananas and them said, like people just aren't really trying on the dailies a lot of times because you're having to put 4 people up, and that creates a whole mess. And so anyway, they win. After they get back to the house, Jay's then talking strategy with Nelson. Devin joins, and they're all 3 kind of like talking through what they should do, and that's when the whole I want new champs and all that stuff.
Nelson also calls himself Spider Nelly T. Kind of a mouthful, but also says that his webs go all over.
Yeah, which I don't think is a characteristic of Spider-Man.
You don't think Spider-Man just makes his webs go everywhere?
No, it's not like he just like in like New York or where like there's just people walking around into Spider-Man's webs, and he's a little bit more careful than that. So the deliberation happens, and Nelson's talking with Nurys, and they're trying to figure out who they're going to go with, and ultimately it's Nany and Bananas, Aneesa and Jordyn, Veronica and Darrell, and then Amber and Chauncey. And his reasoning, at this point at least, was that gives Darrell someone who will save Darrell, and vice versa. Darrell would save Amber, so he thinks those 2 will be safe if one of them, But, I mean, there's always the chance that the other team, the third team in this, will pick the safe dagger, and then one of them's going to go in.
I really think Amber and Chauncey were not even on his radar until Devin mentioned.
Yes, I didn't even write down what they talked about.
Because Devin and Jeyyy were really pushing Nelson to pick Nany and Bananas. And then Devin, in the midst of that, also throws out like, hey, throw in Veronica and Darrell, Jordyn and Aneesa. And then he says, even Chauncey and Amber B.
Well, Jeyyy wanted to throw in them last week, I think, or the week before, but Michelle wouldn't do it. And because he's just like, they're just dead weight. And so the after the names go up on the board and everyone sees them,
Bananas is in shock. No way. I can't believe
I think
this.
he's not in shock.
But Jordyn is screaming, yes. He's pumped. Yeah. He's excited because that's just that is such a Jordyn response to that.
I did put that, it seemed that after the names all came out that Tori and Devin were kind of like a hot topic amongst all of the nominated teams about, they had their hand in this and whatever. How'd they escape nomination every single one of these weeks so far.
Literally everybody in the house starts talking about it. Bananas even says Devin's got something cooking for sure. And then Nani also brings up, hey, Fessy's name hasn't come up either.
Well, and they also said that that this doesn't even seem like Nelson's plan. Like, this seems like people were telling him who to pick.
And he did it.
Yeah. Which it's not a bad pick. Like, but Fessy should have been the fourth team. Because then you for sure are getting rid of one team who's going to be tough.
Yeah.
And so... Because, again, right now, like, Amber and Chauncey, like, they haven't proven anything.
No, they've just been kind of hanging out.
And so in the interrogation, Nelson and Nerys tell Veronica and Darrell that they are 100% not going in. And I wrote that down because I knew already that Veronica... Because for some reason, I don't follow Veronica on my personal Twitter, and I don't follow many challenge-related people on my personal Twitter just because I don't want that bleeding over and accidentally seeing some stuff. But for whatever reason, Twitter's like, hey, Veronica tweeted this. You should probably look at it. It didn't say, like, oh, someone you follow liked it. It was just like, you should look at this.
This is Elon Musk's Twitter.
Yeah. And so I saw that she said something along the lines of, like, thanks for all the support, but I boycotted watching this season out of principle. And I don't know what she's saying, why she boycotted it. Didn't really want to look into it. So I was like, oh, they went home.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wrote down, he guaranteed 100% that they were not going in.
Yeah. So Nelson says that. And then to like further explain his reasoning, he says that he also put in Jordyn and Issa, who saved them last time.
Yeah.
And Amber, who will also have his back.
Yeah.
For sure.
And then they tell Jordyn and Issa that they won't be the vote. They don't get 100% guarantee they won't go in.
But Nelson gave them his word that they wouldn't be their initial vote.
Which is true. And then when Amber and Chauncey come in, they're just like, hey, you guys were just the last name. We just threw you in there so that you would save Darrell and Veronica if you get the sword, and if not, they'll save you. Didn't even really talk like as far as... hey, this is the reason why. It was just like, oh, you're just numbers to save Darrell, basically. Yeah.
And like Nelson tells her that they were just a scapegoat, and that's all it was. Amber B started getting a little emotional, but
she cries a lot.
She does.
Not as much as Michelle, though.
No, Michelle cries a lot. But Amber B, I think she just gets emotional when she starts talking, because we've seen that in almost every conversation that she's had.
She when she gets like flustered, it comes out as tears. And Jake said he was that way.
Jake is that way.
When he gets upset, that's what happens.
He cries when he gets mad. I cry when I get overwhelmed. Not necessarily like sad. It's just when I start getting frustrated and like I can't like function, I'll start crying, and I don't want to cry, and it makes me mad that I'm crying. So I get that. But Amber did kind of throw back at Nelson that she has more respect for him than to blindside him.
Well,
and
I just remembered something else.
And Nelson's like, okay, well, we didn't blindside you, which they kind of did.
Well, I forgot that they start talking about alliances, and she was like, you're in our top 4, but we're probably not in your top 4. And Nelson's like, you're absolutely not. and later he's like, I probably shouldn't have said that about the top 4.
But here's where we first start seeing that Nerys tells Nelson that she really doesn't trust Amber. Yeah. For whatever reason, in her confessional, she's like, I like her, but for some reason, I just can't trust her.
That's been a theme with
a
Amber
lot of people
on previous seasons too.
Yeah.
And I didn't really see it on, like, I still don't outwardly see why there's distrust there, but
there's got to be something that we're not seeing.
Yeah, just like the little interactions that aren't worth filming, but are like, like, why did she say that just kind of like offhand or what? I don't know. But that's like not a Nerys thing. That has been a thing with most of her, especially younger female castmates. They are just like, I don't trust her.
Yeah. I mean, we saw Fessy double cross her
Yeah, but that was expected because again, she wasn't involved in that Big Brother alliance. Because again, they don't trust her for some reason.
Yeah, but like that's my point. For whatever reason, people that she has aligned herself with say that they don't trust her.
The only people that have were like Darrell and CT, and
I think it's because they knew that she wouldn't have the guts to double cross them.
No, and it's just like she's just trying to get through. So when Bananas and Nany come in, they say that they definitely shouldn't be the main vote, and Nany tells Nelson and Reese, she's like, I will not forget this. And
I thought Nelson was going to cry at her saying that.
I don't know. I mean,
because like he was already upset about saying Nany's name. Like he wanted to go after Bananas, but he did not want to go after Nany because they are really tight. And
honestly, he's the type that probably wouldn't verbalize it, but would be like, I know what happened with her mom back home, and I don't I don't want to put any more like bad stuff out there.
Yeah.
Because you can say whatever you want about Nelson, and he can say a lot about Nelson, but like he's genuine.
Yeah, and he's loyal to his people.
Yeah.
And we saw him a few seasons ago with Corey, like take Corey's place in elimination so that Corey would have like a better chance of getting to the final and winning money for his kid.
I don't feel like he is the type that would be like, you know what, that'll give me a lot of airtime. Like I feel like he's just like, no. This is what my heart says to do.
I like that's one of the reasons why like I love Nelson for his Nelson-isms, but also because he is straight up with you and he's loyal to his people. He does not backstab his actual friends and actual alliances.
He told Amber beat her face. You're not in my top 4.
I know that's the thing that furthers the point.
Yeah.
And he didn't even really mean to say it. It's just like it just came out of him. But he sat there and was already upset about it. And then Bananas and Nany come in. Nany's upset and says how they didn't even consider going after Nelson and Reese. And then. That's like the first nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
And then Nany is really upset. I will never forget this. Like I thought Nelson was going to cry. I thought he was that genuinely upset about how upset she was with him.
He's the type that if he did, like I'd be like, "Oh, that's for real."
Yeah, that's the thing.
So, get a night out. Got day out and night out.
Had a lot of time off this episode.
Yeah. Nelson talks with Devin and then Chauncey, but basically he's just kind of like, hey, they're saying this about you, Devin. Amber's saying this, and Devin's like, well, that's rich. And then they go back, and so he sits down with Chauncey and Amber, and basically is like, hey, I've heard that you have a deal with Jordyn, and Jordan's whole thing is to go after Jeyyy, who I'm clearly aligned with Jeyyy, and Chauncey's like, we never said that, and it's like, you kind of did. And it blows that whole thing up to where now Amber's got a lot of heat on her because Devin's got a lot of heat on him from outline sources. And then we get back to the house.
Everybody's trying to go to bed. It seemed like.
Yeah, the next time we talk to somebody, I want to ask, what's the average time that you get back on these nights out? Is it like 3 a.m. or is it like 6 a.m.? And everyone's drunk probably for the most part. Devin clearly is, and he's just talking to Michelle.
Just alone. It's just the two of them at first.
Yeah.
Outside.
Well, it
by
draws
the
a
fire
crowd.
Pit
Yeah.
Because they start getting heated and getting louder.
Yeah, and basically, I don't even remember exactly what.
Devin sat down to Michelle and said that he does not like being lied to.
I've got that written down.
And asks her what Amber's been saying about him.
I guess that maybe, she was asking what Amber.
Because he was like, tell me straight to my face because I want the full honest truth.
And she just was kind of skirting around it and like, oh, I don't know what she said. And
she was trying to keep from saying anything about Amber at all.
Well, he was just like, Michelle,
friends.
I don't like being lied to. And he's drunk. And people are like, let's just talk about this in the morning. And then like you have now probably 8 people outside in the fire pit area.
Everyone else looking through the window of the bedroom.
Yeah, you got everyone else in like a bunk room watching through, like Kenny and Fessy and like all these people watching through
Amber B.
the window. Like typically they kind of can manipulate that footage to make it look like more people are listening and all that. But in that case, I really think that they all were listening to what was going on.
Bananas was...
I feel like that footage was edited.
But he did say he was upstairs in his room laying in bed and he could still hear them from outside.
That is very...
It's possible because Devin got to where he started yelling.
I'm saying that's very probable. I don't think the footage they showed was from that moment.
Yeah.
The bunk footage, like where everyone's in the dark room looking out, that feels like that's what was happening. But it becomes a huge thing. Everyone watches it. Some people are thinking that Devin's just trying to get heat off him on someone else.
In a way, I think he is, but he was a little condescending when he talked to Michelle, and I think that was like because she said something, and Devin was like, "That's my trigger. That's my trigger," and he just starts getting like.
She said, "I'm sorry you feel that way."
Yeah,
and he was like, "Oh boy,"
and he's like, "You're not gonna gaslight me, whatever." Yeah. So he starts like really going off on her, and I think him being like that was kind of like a trigger for her, and so it was just very much clashing.
If you're wanting to psychologically manipulate someone in a game, Michelle is extremely paranoid, and she plays very paranoid. Again, she went after Laurel because Laurel just didn't talk to her, and she thought that meant she hated her.
But because Laurel didn't go out of her way to be friends. What I'm saying.
And so Michelle, if it seems like Devin is playing a game where he's trying to use politics and manipulation to get what he wants, she is a target that would be easy to go after. And if that's the angle he's doing this from, I don't mind it. If he's doing it to be a jerk, that's different. But in a gameplay setting where you're like, oh, I've got stuff looking at me, let's try to get it on someone else who already has heat on them from the past few weeks.
I think that's what he was doing because we get a confessional from Tori where like everybody's starting to disperse, like they kind of settle down. They're like, we'll just talk about it in the morning. And Tori says in a confessional, she's like, I'm kind of glad that this happened and that it's over because he's calling out Michelle on some of the things that she's done, and it's getting some attention on her and away from us.
Yeah. And again, like Jay and Michelle have already, like the last 2 weeks, put a big target on themselves. So we get to the elimination the next day, it seems, and Nelson and Nerese pick Amber and Chauncey, but before they do,
he gives a speech.
He says, I pray to God for forgiveness for this. And I was like, that's very...
Well, he said that all 4 teams down there are like his dysfunctional family, and he can't look them in the eye.
Yeah, like this is like too like you're putting too much emotion into this. Because like I just pray to God that they forgive me for this.
I know, I loved it so much.
Well, he picks Amber and Chauncey, and Bananas and Nany are the first team to pull daggers, and 2 weeks in a row they get the safe dagger. And
who does Bananas save? None other than Jordyn.
Well, yeah, but it's because I think out of the crew,
Jordyn and Bananas are more closely aligned this season than Bananas is with Darrell, because Darrell and Veronica.
Anissa is close with Bananas, and Anissa is close with Nany, and so like, again, Veronica and Darrell have just kind of been on the outskirts looking in, and. You know, as much as they said, well, hey, they didn't come to us and say anything, but they haven't really gone to anybody else to try to, like, from what we've seen. So
they've tried to play like Kim and Colleen, and Kim and Colleen have already been sent home because of that.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, definitely don't model your game after rookies who are from another country who may have never even seen this show before. So yeah, they saved Jordyn and Anissa. And the elimination is called Deep Web, and
more Spider-Man stuff.
So it's just basically it's like
Spider Nelly T.
It's like a 5-level structure, and you start on the top and you work your way down through these like bands, and there's puzzle pieces at the bottom. There's 8 puzzle pieces, and you go one at a time, and you rotate every time, and then you go work your way back up. And immediately, I was like, well, Amber and Chauncey are definitely more suited for this because Amber's very tall and long. Chauncey looks roughly the same size as Darrell. Veronica is very short and stout. And again, you're squeezing through like little like gaps in like nylon webbing essentially. And I was like, Amber's gonna be fine at this. Chauncey's gonna be fine at this. And another thing is, they're also like 15 years younger than Veronica and Darrell.
Quite a bit.
Yeah, and so that's just a harder thing. Again, the if it was just a race, Chauncey and Amber won easy. The puzzle was where it always equals out, which is what Darrell's point was. He said
because like they were about 3 puzzle pieces behind Amber and Chauncey.
Yeah,
and Darrell was like, honestly, we're still in this game because the puzzle is the equalizer. We still have a chance.
It's which is true. You know, and again, give credit to Veronica, not Veronica, but Veronica for like this is stacked against her. You know,
I mean, TJ was cheering for Veronica the entire time.
Once she realized, like, hey, lay on your stomach and use the glass to use leverage to push off with your feet to kind of, that definitely helped.
Who told her to do that? Was it Jordyn or Devin?
I don't remember.
It was one of those two. And then once she like figured it out, it took a lot more energy and it took more time, but she figured it out, like how to get back up.
Yeah.
TJ was cheering for Veronica very loudly. Also Bananas, Jordyn, and Devin. Yeah,
again, well, I mean, there's no reason for them to align with Amber and Chauncey. Like, what? Who cares? If they come back and they're mad, like, who cares?
Yeah,
they haven't proven anything. And if anything, in this elimination, it wasn't a good look for either team. Because it's a pretty like you just were making like digital like 8s. Like when I say digital 8s, I mean like how like an electric clock looks, where it uses that same little air. Like, it's not line for everything, and they could not figure it out. I don't know how long it took. I wish we would have got a timer because I always like that. Somebody in the crowd, I think it may have been Anissa, said
she's like, I don't know if it took 1 hour or 3 hours or 3 days.
If it legitimately felt like it took an hour to finish that, that's crazy.
Yes. But I'm telling you, like everybody got to their puzzle, and it hit a stalemate.
Yeah. And it was turned in a way to where the crowd really couldn't help, because it was like perpendicular to where they were looking at. And so, you know, Veronica and Darrell just didn't have what it took to win. Chauncey and Amber finished it, but I will say they won, but it wasn't like a good win, because from what we saw, this should have been done a long time ago by competent teams who can handle puzzles. Like if you had Bananas or Devin or Jordyn or Laurel or like any of these like vets who are like good at puzzles, like I CT, like it would have just been done.
Well, Amber and Chauncey worked on the puzzle together.
Yeah.
Veronica just kind of leaned over the railing facing the house while Darrell put the puzzle together.
At least in some of the clips we saw, that definitely. I'm sure she helped, but that's supposed to be like one of her strong points. Is that like, hey, you know, she's not where she was from a physical perspective, you know, back in the day, but she can still politic and she's good at puzzles and stuff, or the mental side of it. And she didn't do that this episode, and so they got sent home. It sucks because I don't mind either one of them. I especially really like Darrell. I've always liked Darrell. But I will. I mean, man, it's just like it's been underwhelming when he's come back on, and I think he still has it like physically, but there's just like something missing, and I don't know what it is.
He doesn't have that drive.
I don't know if that's it or
that power. He's not been putting in the hours.
You gonna keep going?
I don't want to get sued by The Rock.
So it's just I don't know. It doesn't surprise me that Amber and Chauncey won. But really it seemed like nobody won because they all took forever.
Yeah.
We got a little bit of preview for the next episode. Yeah, the notes I said were Amber and Chauncey win. Somebody had to. And like that's just kind of what it seemed like from the way everyone was talking about it. So I don't have anything else for this episode because
not a lot happened.
And the previews for the next stuff, that's for next week. We'll get into that. So on your scale, who smashed some heads?
Ooh, this was hard. It took me a long time to figure out anybody that smashed heads.
Okay.
The only thing I could come up with.
Okay.
Nani and Bananas pulling the safe dagger 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, I mean that's a good one. I've got to give it to Nerys.
Oh yeah, okay.
I mean she
is doing well.
She's done well, but like she's made Nelson, who was like the biggest joke of dailies that I've ever seen. That's probably no one else. There's honestly, no matter how long the challenge goes on for beyond this, I don't think we will ever see a run of daily losses again like we saw with Nelson.
Yeah.
I don't think because I don't think you're going to have someone that's that bad at the show that gets to keep coming back and do, but he's good in elimination, so I give him that. But like I don't think it's possible. I think if you like it's kind of like the thing where they're like, hey, you know, in probability, like in statistics, if you like give a monkey a typewriter, like eventually they'll type Shakespeare, like in some probability of a universe, like out of it may take like billions and trillions of, but somehow someone's going to write Shakespeare. That's
someone
Nelson.
Or the monkey.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The monkey. And so that's kind of how it is with Nelson. It's just like even if you tried to lose 51 dailies, at some point you do something like, oh, I guess we won. I don't know. So I don't think we'll see that again. So I gave it to Nerys for bringing him up and doing that. And so who got their head smashed?
Everyone that was doing that elimination puzzle.
Yeah, it's a rough look. I'm gonna give it to Amber because Nelson just said, "Yo, you're not in my top 4."
I'm in your top 4, but you're not in mine.
and that really upset her. And so even though she won the elimination, I can't give credit for that. So that's where we're at. For this week, the letter was T for the movies.
Now,
and I was going to clarify. We are not doing any movies that start with the unless the second word
also starts with a T.
Yeah, because we've been doing this like in a grammatical sense for like articles like the Lord of the Rings would be an L.
Yeah, right.
Because otherwise when you got to T, there's a million movies. And also there was a million movies that start with T that do not start with the. Like this, It took me so long to go through.
You had a hard time. I have.
No, I have more picks this week than I have any other week.
How many did you get?
I thought we might overlap on 1 or 2, and so I have like 6.
I have 5.
Okay, well that works. That works.
Just because, like, usually what I've been doing, if it's a list where I have a hard time finding 3, I stop at 3.
Yeah.
But if I have more than 3, I pick 5 in case we overlap, but also for honorable mentions.
This was the one where I could have probably had like 10 or more.
Wow.
Easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I stopped myself at 5.
Yeah. I literally went through a Wikipedia article that had every movie that starts with the letter T from all countries. And just went through it.
Oh, I didn't do that. I did like top 100 movies that start with T that are not the.
It was when I Google movies that start with the letter blah, and then I go through every one of them.
I usually hit about 2 to 3 links.
So, because the movie I have in here first, I don't even know if it honestly would make my it probably it would. It'd probably make my 5.
My top 3, the 3 that I'm recommending.
Yeah.
Are going to be out of the 5, the 3 that I like the most.
Okay.
That's how I'm doing it.
Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
We'll rock, paper, scissors.
Okay.
Now you have to do it on shoot, okay? Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
I win.
That's not one.
I won. So I'll for me, and I forgot about this movie until I got way far down into the T letters. And then I was like, oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's a movie that you've seen because I said, hey, you need to watch this. And it's a movie on Hulu called Too Funny to Fail. And I watched it one night by myself. And then the next day, I was like, Hannah, you need to watch this. And it is a documentary about the Dana Carvey show from the early 90s, which is where he hired Steve Carell and Stephen Colbert and the guy that went on to write like an Oscar winner in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. If you watched Parks and Rec, the it's not Congressman, but the Jam guy. He's
you
like
just got jammed.
Yeah, Louis C.K. like Starburns, I think from
Community.
From Community. Like the cast that they had behind the scenes on this show is insane, but it's so funny because you see like these really candid like interviews from like Steve Carell and Stephen Colbert, who this is where they got their start. Was Dana Carvey and them saw them at like Second City in Chicago, and they wanted to hire Steve Carell, but he didn't show up that night, and Stephen Colbert did, so they hired him, and then they ended up calling back and hiring Steve Carell too. And they're like, oh, Dana Carvey's this funny guy who's like America's, family friendly, whatever. He's just from SNL. And then they take their show and they go off the deep end into like weird stuff. And it's put right after Home Improvement.
Yeah, it was like Bill Clinton with like cow udders.
It was Bill Clinton with like nipples, like nursing puppies and stuff. Like that was the cold open of like the first episode.
Right after Home Improvement.
Yeah, and so like it's got like not John, but Bill Hader and people like that talking about, like this show, like I loved it because it was so weird. And it's just a really, really funny documentary, and it's just about comedy, and it's just a great thing overall. If you have any interest in comedy or Steve Carell or Stephen Colbert or any of those people, like it's definitely worth watching. I mean, you liked it, and you didn't really care about Dana Carvey show.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you how many times I've watched The Master in Disguise.
Yeah, great. Too Funny to Fail is what it's called. So
okay, am I going next? Yeah. My first recommendation is Stephenie Meyer's Twilight.
Have not seen that, so that's definitely not on my list.
I made a point to add it to the list, not that it's one of my favorite movies, but simply because you have never seen it.
True.
I want to sit you down and make you watch through Twilight because I need to watch you watch it.
Well, that's like 16 hours of stuff that
I'm not saying all the movies. I want you to watch the first movie. I want to sit you down and watch you watch Twilight.
I don't know.
Not the Twilight Saga, Twilight.
We'll have to see on that one. Definitely.
Because I want your thoughts on it.
It's not on my list. I'll give you that one. That wasn't one I thought we'd overlap on. Another one that I have is The Truman Show.
Oh yeah.
That may be like the first like real serious role that Jim Carrey did. It's like it was such a foreign concept back then, but like now, like having a whole fake like town where someone was raised in video, like that could be a thing. Like
yeah, I know, and it's wild.
And so I really liked The Truman Show. I remember seeing it in theaters I don't even know how old I was.
It's a great movie. Like I like Jim Carrey, but that movie in particular, I had seen it once or twice beforehand, but when I was in high school, I took kind of like a film class in high school. It was like audiovisual.
Yeah.
And so we took like 2 or 3 days and we watched through the Truman Show as not as like an audience member, but like filmography, whatever, to dissect the movie. And it made me look at it in such a way that really just kind of opened my eyes to how they pulled it off, how they came up with that idea. And now looking back on it, I'm like, back then I was like, God, that would never happen. But now I'm like, oh yeah.
Well, you say back then, you're talking if you were in high school
10 years ago.
Yeah, but it came out like in the 90s, like late 90s.
I know. But even 10 years ago, like it was, there's no way it could have ever happened. Now, I could see that.
Yeah,
happening.
especially with like camera tech and like how little you can make stuff. Like you could absolutely disguise cameras all over something someone would never know.
Yeah.
It's just an ethical question on if you should do that or not.
You should not.
And that's the whole point of the movie is like, you know, you got to let him live his own life. So yeah, that's one of mine.
Okay. Technically, this one does not start with a T.
Oh, well then
No,
what
it does. It does because it came up on the list because if you spell it out, it does start with a T. It starts with a number.
I think that is a gray area.
It's not 10 Things I Hate About You. Technically, the title
is a 10.
Starts with a 10, but that is the word 10.
It is, but that movie specifically on the like iconography of the name, it's 10, the number 10.
Yeah, but it still you start the word 10 with a T.
That's you're starting on a slippery slope. That
I'm not.
I mean, it's
10 Things I Hate About You. Heath Ledger. I love
Julia
that
Stiles.
movie. Yeah, nobody really cares about her. It's Heath Ledger.
She was like
she was pretty big back then.
Yeah.
She's not anymore. But Heath Ledger.
You know, this is Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I don't remember which one, but it's like just a modern day version of Shakespeare.
They did that a lot back then.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's a great movie. Anytime it's on, I'll stop and watch it.
I haven't seen it in at least 20 years.
Ew. I've not seen it in probably.
Ew.
That's too long to go without watching this movie.
No.
I've seen it at least once since we've been married.
Yeah, I definitely haven't. So.
Can that count?
Yeah, that's fine. I have in mind, which thought we could overlap on this one, was Thor Ragnarok.
I did not add Thor.
I only did because I think Thor Ragnarok is legitimately like top 3 Marvel movie, and I love everything they did in that movie and everything about it. And again, you guys, I would assume almost everyone's familiar with that movie out of everything we've suggested, so I'm not going to go much into that, but much better than Love and Thunder, which just came out. But yeah, I thought we would overlap on that side. That's why I had an extra one.
Okay. Question. I'm debating between 2.
You said you only had 5. So
yeah, I've only said 2.
Yeah. Well, then what are you debating? Just saying.
Like I technically have 3 movies left.
Yeah.
I guess I wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I had 6 actually. I thought I had 5.
I have
movies.
6.
I thought I had 6. One of them I am not going to add to the list. I'm going to take it out. There's 2 that I'm really debating on.
Just say one.
Hold on. I'm really debating on adding as my third for my top 3. Are we doing honorable mentions? If we do,
We're going to do 5.
We're going to do 5?
Yeah, that's what we said at the beginning.
Okay. Then next on the list is Twister.
That's fine.
I've probably seen that movie 100 times.
Oh no, I've not seen anywhere near it. Yeah, and like the ending of that movie, very fictional on what you could do. I don't think a leather belt can save you in that situation.
Yeah. Still, like
iconic movie.
Absolutely. We used to live in Tornado Alley.
They're getting them like this week.
Yeah, they've had them today.
Yeah.
Like as of like a couple hours ago. The scene with the cow flying in the air.
That was
Yeah, it's crazy.
So
cinematic masterpiece.
So
Twister
when I was younger, because that movie came out in like 97 or something like that, 97, 99, something like that. It was in the 90s for sure. I didn't really understand how franchises worked. And so I assumed
96.
Okay, yeah. I assumed movies that had a similar theme and name were also part of the franchise. And there was 2 other movies that came out not long after that. And they may have just been TV movies. One of them was called Night of the Twisters. And it had like Devon Sawa in it. And
really?
Yeah, and I used to watch that one, and I thought it was like a sequel to Twister because I just and that the only reason I even brought that up is because like I used to play like Roller Coaster Tycoon as well, and I would go to like TJ Maxx with my mom, and there was a game that was called like Skate Park Tycoon, and I was like, oh, it's the same people. Not the same people. That game was terrible. And so I guess I just thought, oh, it's got the same names. Legally, it has to be from the same people.
Night of the Twisters is a young adult fiction novel.
No, it's a movie
released in 1984.
But it was a movie too.
Yeah.
And then there was one other one. There was 3 Twister movies that came out all around the same time. But that wasn't on my list. My 4th one is gonna be The Terminal.
Okay.
Which
I haven't seen that.
You haven't seen it? It's great. It's a great movie.
I don't know anything about it.
Based on a true story. It's Tom Hanks is a foreigner coming from, I forgot what country, somewhere in like Eastern Europe, and he's coming to the U.S. to I don't want to say anything in case you won't, but he's coming to the U.S. and as he's like trying to leave, his country like dissolves and goes into civil war, and like there's no recognized government or authority, and so he can't legally like. Oh, it's when it's either when he's going home, trying to go home, or trying to get. I think it's actually he arrives and they won't let him leave the airport because he can't clear customs, and they're like, I don't know, like you're kind of stuck here, and so he just lives in an airport for like a long time, and it happened in real life, and he didn't have any money. And like it shows him like going around and, like collecting like the luggage carts and returning them, so you get like a quarterback, and he would use that to like make money, and he would build up places for him to sleep and all this stuff. And it happened. I actually just read the other day the guy that it was based on moved back into the airport and then died.
Wow.
Because like I think it was like the end of, I don't remember exactly, but I read it somewhere the other day. But yeah, it's based on a true story. It's a great movie. Good performance. I love Tom Hanks. I like almost anything Tom Hanks is in, and like it's just such an interesting thing. And it's just like it literally is. It only takes place in an airport, and I want to say Catherine Zeta-Jones is in it. She's like a flight attendant that is kind of like a love interest a little bit, and but yeah, it's a good movie. Because it's just really strange. But I can't believe you haven't seen it. I own it. We should watch it. It's good.
It keeps popping up on either Netflix or Hulu for like recommended for me to watch.
Yeah, it's good.
And I have to be in the mood for stuff like that.
No, it's a really good movie. I like it a lot. So
okay. Tropic Thunder.
I almost put that, and then I didn't because I thought you would.
I wrote it down and I added more movies because I was worried you would say it.
Weirdly, I almost referenced Tropic Thunder at the beginning of the podcast, and I didn't because I thought you might bring it up at the end of the podcast. Because when you were talking about Blu-ray, there's a whole scene in Tropic Thunder where Jay Baruchel is talking about how Blu-ray versus HD DVD happened, which was a thing. PlayStation 3 went with Blu-ray, HD DVD went with Xbox, and what happened was video games and then subsequently pornography went Blu-ray, and that swung the whole market. And so HD DVD completely died because not enough people were doing it. Because you used to back then, but they were released on both platforms. It was like when a movie would come out, it'd be on Blu-ray and HD DVD, and they both were just upscaled.
That was the thing. We would go to Movie Gallery and we would have to get the DVD because our...
No. I'm talking about there was a thing, another format called HD DVD. That's another reason why it probably failed. But there was DVDs, and then there was a thing called HD DVD, which is a whole separate player that your DVD player wouldn't work. And then there was Blu-ray, and Blu-ray had blue cases. HD DVD had like maroon cases.
Oh no, I don't know that. I know the blue cases for the Blu-ray.
Yeah, exactly. And then it was PlayStation and pornography is what swung that debate into Blu-ray just completely taking over. And they talk about that in Tropic Thunder. Tropic Thunder is a really great satire and also a Tom Cruise film, and you picked a Tom Cruise film.
I completely disregard the fact that Tom Cruise was in it.
That's such a great cameo, though. Like, that is such a...
Jack Black was in it. Robert Downey Jr. plays an actor who gets in blackface for a movie.
For the entirety
For
of
the entire movie. And, like, because... I remember it was pretty recent that a lot of people like suddenly discovered Tropic Thunder and were trying to cancel Robert Downey Jr.
I think they saw it and they're like, oh, but they like there's context to it. Like, that was the whole thing.
If you're gonna get upset about that, make sure you watch the whole movie first because Robert Downey Jr. plays an actor who gets in blackface for a movie inside the movie of Tropic Thunder. Yeah. And the whole thing is they're calling out how it's bad for this actor to be in blackface.
There's definitely context to that. And I do think that though Tom Cruise as the like overweight it's not manager, but like whatever he is, producer, whatever, such a great cameo. And I want to say I read that they talked about spinning off another movie based on his character in that.
Really?
Yeah. But yeah, I saw that in college, where I went to college, would do movie nights every so often with kind of newer releases that weren't available yet, but were kind of out of the theater. And I went to Tropic Thunder with some of my friends, and it was so much better than I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm. That's how I was the first time I watched it. I didn't really know anything about it, but I knew it was supposed to be funny. And I watched it and I was like, this is incredible. I love this movie.
I didn't pick that one. For my technically last one, it was tough. This last spot was tough because I have two movies that I honestly could put in this spot. Mm-hmm. One of them I would say more people know about, so that's why I bumped it down. Do you have 6 or no? You have 5.
I have 6.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my fifth one, when I didn't think I was going to add that 6th, was I went with Three Amigos, which I've not seen in a long, long time, but that definitely kind of like that era of a movie definitely shaped like the type of like comedy and stuff that I was into.
It shaped the kind of person you became.
It is Steve Martin and Martin Short, who, by the way, are hosting Saturday Night Live in like 3 weeks together.
Oh, that'll be awesome.
And Chevy Chase, and it's a movie from the mid 80s or like 86, something like that, and set in like the early 1900s. And they're these like early era film stars, and they get recruited to help defend a town from an actual like Wild West villain, and they think that it's a movie role, and so they're thinking it's one thing, and it's just that type of thing. And I love Steve Martin and Martin Short, and I did love Chevy Chase until I learned more about him. I think Pierce on Community is one of the best characters, but also that is much more like he is in real life than a lot of people probably realize. I went with Three Amigos, and then the last one I think more people will know. Well, that kind of got cut off abruptly because as we were recording, the entirety of our building lost power, and none of the other buildings in the apartment complex did, but ours was the lucky one.
We're special.
And so that's what happened. This part that you're hearing now is about
20 minutes later.
A lot longer than that. I'd probably like 30 or 40 minutes later than when we stopped recording. But I'd finished with Three Amigos, and then Hannah has 2 more, and I have 1 more. So here's yours.
My next fifth movie is the 2010 remake of True Grit.
Okay. Saw that in theaters.
I saw it in theaters too. I was a sophomore in high school, and my high school was having like a Valentine's dance like they do every year, and I
asked Jeff Bridges.
No, for whatever reason, I was like, I do not want to go to this stupid dance. So True Grit was like, it had recently come out, and so I knew that Daddy really wanted to see it because he loves like old westerns.
Yeah.
He's a really big Clint Eastwood fan because he grew up watching all of his western movies. And so he was really excited about the remake and like the cast. And I was like, hey, instead of me going to this dance, why don't we drive down? We went to a town in Mississippi that was not super far away. And so we had like a daddy-daughter movie date night. So we went to see True Grit and had fun. I'm not typically one that's into Westerns, but I do remember really liking it.
Interesting. Because another movie that I thought you would pick that I don't think we'll see. It's not my pick, but
you can say it because I bet it's not my last movie.
I'm surprised you didn't pick There Will Be Blood. Yeah, exactly. You picked True Grit.
I forgot it started with a T.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I saw that one, and I was like, "Oh, she's for sure gonna pick that," so I skipped over it.
Because that's like I freaking love that movie.
Well, not as much as True Grit.
Why did I forget that? I've only seen this True Grit. I only saw it the one time in theaters with
That's
Daddy.
the only time I've seen it too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for me, my sixth movie that would have got bumped out if we did 5, only because I feel like most people know it, and I've probably seen it, was Tommy Boy. And
I haven't seen it.
Never seen Tommy Boy?
No.
Do you know what it is?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
Weird. Chris Farley, David Spade. It's like a buddy movie, and they did that, and then like a year later they did Black Sheep, which I like Black Sheep a lot too. But they're completely different characters. But Tommy Boy is like, you need to watch Tommy Boy. I mean, it's just it's like 1994. Obviously, because Chris Farley died in like 1996.
Yeah.
And he's the star for sure. And it's got Rob Lowe in it as
really?
like
young Rob Lowe?
Young Rob Lowe, but post like the 80s era.
Yeah.
But he really wasn't doing much else. And so he did this. And yeah, it's a good movie. I can't believe you haven't seen it.
I know.
The whole fat guy in a little coat thing, like that's really iconic from that movie. So yeah, that was mine. Just because probably most people have seen that over Three Amigos.
Yeah.
So that's my 6th one.
Okay. So my final movie
should be There Will Be Blood.
It's gonna be There Will Be Blood.
What was the one you had written down?
Taken.
Yeah.
Because like, that's not one of my favorite movies. Like I'm like Liam Neeson is fine. He does a good job in that role.
I like those for what they are.
I like them for what they are. My dad really loved that. The first one when it came out was a big deal.
Saw in theaters
My dad loved it because he's like, if you were ever kidnapped, I would be Liam Neeson. My dad would be Liam Neeson.
Yeah, you said Neeson.
It just came out. So like, yeah, I like movies like that. But it's not like in my top radar.
Well,
I just picked it because I was like, well, it was actually the second movie that I put on my list.
Because it's TA. It's take.
Because I was going down the list and I was like, oh, and I had passed a bunch of movies that I had either heard about and never seen or had seen and just didn't want to add them to the list. So I just added it because I was like, well, I'd rather have this than get down and not be able to find anything else. Taken off of my list, replace it with There Will Be Blood because I love that movie.
Yeah,
I love that movie.
Well, the other thing I struggled with was to not add one of the Toy Story movies.
I almost added one of the Toy Story movies, and I was like, no, that's like Zach's favorite. That's going to be on his list. Yeah. So I didn't add any of them because I knew you would have it.
Toy Story 1 was initially on my list, and then I backed off it because one, I thought you might do one of them.
No, I backed off because like I reserved that for you.
Yeah, the Toy Story movies are great. And Toy Story 1 in particular was the first fully CG animated movie ever. Like they'd done like parts of them before, but not a full. And so it was like mind blowing at the time. Yeah, anyway, that's our picks. We were not planning on having a power outage. Luckily, it saved basically everything that we did.
But I'm definitely going to rewatch There Will Be Blood in the very, very near future. After we watch the third installment of the Lord of the Rings Extended Edition.
Probably not happening tonight.
It is happening tonight.
Because it is already 10 p.m.
Doesn't matter. We're watching it.
We haven't eaten dinner yet. And so that's what we'll be doing. We'll be back with you at some point in the next couple of days. Follow us on Twitter @SmashingHeads and then @SmashingHeads Podcast on Facebook and Instagram.
Stay cute.